If you'll bow your heads and pray with me. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity we've had today to come here and to worship you. We pray that the words that we study now, which are from your good book, are able to speak to us today, and we are able to learn from them. We ask this on your name. Amen. So in our journey of kings, we're not going to kind of stop talking about kings now. We're going to start talking about the prophet Elijah. As you can see back here, this is the prophet Elijah cycle. We will be with him until the end of the first chapter of 2 Kings. So this guy kind of ties us over. If you saw on the board, I did have 20. I ran out of time to read it, so we're only doing the first 3 chapters, which come to kind of a nice close. We'll be starting with Elijah kind of just appearing out of the wilderness, and then we'll be ending with him calling Elisha in New Friendo. Our first section is going to be chapter 17, verses 1 through 7. Can I get a volunteer to read that? Thank you. Out of the whole entire Bible, this is the first time we've even heard of Tishba. And this is the last time we will hear of Tishba. It is only said in connection to Elijah. And if you ask me where it is, that's an excellent question. We don't know. There is a theory that it is the city Charoth, but we're not sure. That's in the northern kingdom. Elijah and Elisha will be focusing on the northern kingdom. So if you remember from that big amount of kings we went through, we will be during the King Ahab, which if I can find my beautiful notes, I will tell you how long he reigned. He reigned from 874 to 853. He was a bad king because he was from the north. So he reigned for about 21 years. So somewhere in this 21-year cycle, Elijah appears. We don't know when. We don't kind of know for how long. We just know that he's here. I had some other fun notes. Where he goes is going to be east. So instead of being in the northern kingdom, he's going to be spending a lot of his time outside of it because there is some massive persecution happening because Jezebel, the pagan non-Israelite, goes, I don't want Israelites here. So already off to a fun start. You know, it's like Kings is not a happy book. Another thing to note is that what animal brings stuff to Elijah? Ravens. Are ravens clean? No. They were seen as very unclean because sometimes ravens eat carcasses, which is not clean. And I love to think that God specifically chose ravens because anyone who followed the kosher way, even just a little bit, would see raven, can't go there, that's unclean. And of course, Elijah's right there. Giving meat and bread he's basically eating like a 3-course meal every day. He's got a nice hearty thing happening because meat is rare and it's expensive and God's giving him meat. So he's ensuring that he is being sustained. You're not just going to kind of be there. You're going to be good and healthy because I need you for later. That's how I'm seeing this first part. Elijah prophesies that there's going to be no rain because there's wickedness, and that rain happens for about 3.5 years, give or take. It says during the 3rd year, so we're not quite sure how long that takes, but it's kind of a good estimate that this is 3.5 years. So this is not a short time drought. This is a long drought. And we'll see that in the next part with the widow collecting sticks. Can I get a volunteer to read 8 to 16? Thank you. She's gathering sticks. So I can only imagine this is like gathering up rabbits so that you die on a full stomach. It has to not be great at all. So a reminder that if you're a widow, you are basically dead. You have no one bringing in any form of money, and as a widow, the only forms of money you can make is prostitution or nothing. So this widow is not doing great at all. And when Elijah gets to her, she is going, well, there's a drought. I can't even gather up the scraps that would be left in the fields. Might as well just try and die now. The flour and the oil lasting has to be very reminiscent to a lot of people. If you guys remember how Hanukkah is, it's because the oil of the lamps lasted for 7 days. And if that little bit of oil lasted for 7 days, the amazingness of God having flour and oil last for 3.5 years is insane. Truly just shows the splendors and the wonders that God can provide with the smallest of things. We see this later very much had to be a connection to other people with the fish and the loaves feeding 5,000 and 4,000 people. People had to be making this connection because this is Elijah. This is a bigwig. Even though he's only here for a few chapters, everyone knows Elijah. So there had to be connections that we see later on. When it comes to here, those are pretty cheap. Those are pretty common. There's a bunch of olive trees that have oil. Flour is very common because wheat's the main crop. So these weren't things that were in in scarcity. But they weren't things that she could get now because if you have a drought, you can't grow crops. And if you can't grow crops, you can't get food. If you can't get food, then you die. Where she is, interesting enough, is actually north of Israel, more into, if I have it written, which I don't, I believe it's into Jordan. Oh, I don't remember my geography now. It's north of Israel as we know it. So she's in a wholly different country in two ways. She's not in the kingdom of Israel, and she's not even what we would consider modern-day Israel. So she is north of the whole entire kingdom, showing just how separated she is. I find it interesting that later on she'll be talking about God, and it's almost satirical how she does it. Then it's oh, shoot, no, this is actually a real thing. You're not just some crazy dude off the street. I love that she's picking up sticks. Oh, go ahead.
It's on the coast of modern-day Lebanon.
Thank you. I knew it was north. I didn't remember how far. So it's decently north. This isn't something you would make in one day. I don't think it's even something you can make in 2 days. And especially being in a drought, it's all dry, which means it's probably going to take you like 3 or 4 days for a trip that would normally take you just 2. The sticks is interesting. It was seen as unlawful to gather sticks, good proper sticks, if it was on the Sabbath. You had to collect sticks on another day. Now, she could have been collecting sticks on another day. It could have not been the Sabbath. We don't know. We can safely assume this is probably not a Jewish settlement of any sort, which is why Elijah is able to go there without fear. We don't know. But it is interesting that she's gathering sticks, because as a widow, you couldn't go out to the field and cut branches to get sticks, and you couldn't get the good sticks that were by there. You had to be by the town to gather sticks. Fun cultural things to show just how outside of the social circle she is. Our next segment is going to be 17 to 24. Can I get a volunteer? Thank you.
After this, the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became ill. And his illness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. And she said to Elijah, "What have you against me, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son." And he said to her, "Give me your son." And he took him from her arms and carried him up into the upper chamber where he lodged and laid him on his own bed. And he cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought calamity upon the widow with whom I sojourn by killing her son?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this child's life come into him again." And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah. life of the child came into him again, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper chamber into the house and delivered him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son lives." And the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord is in your mouth. The word of the Lord that's in your mouth is truth."
Something interesting to note is children are its. As we think children now, they're an it. When you hit puberty, that's when you get a gender. That was very common in Greek writing, and that was the common motif in just that portion of the world's language. So this child is somewhere between like 12 and 18. So this is a teen, but to them that's a child. Which she's banking everything on this. All of a sudden, food lasts, and I actually might have a chance to not die. I need my child to stay alive because this is a son. We can assume this is the only child. We don't have anything mentioned off of traditional storytelling at this time. The other kids don't matter if there are any, so we don't know if there are any. But we can probably safely assume this is the firstborn. So everything rides on this. If the firstborn lives to get a job, that means the mom doesn't die and the whole house stays to them. It's not turned over to the next closest male neighbor. So her whole future rides on this kid, and the kid dies, which has to be terrifying. I have to think she's bringing the child literally in her arms. It could be another thing where she's on a bed crying with the child. We don't know. It's left to our imagination, so however you think of it, I like to think she's walking to Elijah with the kid. When Elijah brings him up to the upper chamber and lays the child on his own bed, he stretches himself upon the child. I have no idea what this means. It could be he stretched arms. It could be he literally stretched over the kid. It's not lay, and I looked it up. It's specifically not the word lay. So I don't know what this means other than he stretched over. Jumping back a bit, this is the only time we hear about this widow. She's never mentioned again, and she's only in chapter 17. So we don't know what her sin is. And as I keep saying, the Bible is for our salvation, not to satisfy our curiosity. There are so many questions I want answered, but no idea. So whatever this great sin is that either caused her to be a widow or whatever, we don't know. But we do know that she thinks this is the result of that sin, that it has come upon her child to be killed. Elijah revives the son because of God. I find it very interesting that it was God listened to the voice of Elijah, which very much changes how a lot of other miracles are that we see. God does this, whereas this specific story, God listens to Elijah. And this sets up what we will experience in the next chapter, where God listens to Elijah again. Nope, that's all my notes. Okay. Moving on to chapter 18. This is a nice big block, but it's a very interesting block. We're going to go from verse 1 all the way to verse 19. Can I get a volunteer for this very short section? Thank you.
After many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, third year, saying, "Go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. The famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. When Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and
Is it you, you punk of Israel? That was everything. Is it you, you punk of Israel? That's more getting, no, that doesn't get it. Because when he says you troubler of Israel, it's worse than that. It's like you destroyer of Israel. Because remember, he prophesies the drought, and he's going, it's him, it's that guy. The Obadiah that we experience here is not the same Obadiah that we have the book for. He shows up on the scene about 500 years later. So it's a miracle if he lives that long, but I highly doubt it. I like how this is, again, a sign that not everyone in the kingdom of Israel had turned to paganism. He says that he's a fearer of God since his youth, which is just to say that he's been a believer his whole life. Again, it's a sign to show that there is still a faithful remnant in the kingdom of Israel, however little that may be. We have no idea because we're told this in a way that is important for our salvation, showing the power of God even through the pagan world, which I'm sure some people would have thought, oh, we're in pagan land, God won't help us here. And then you have more than one thing showing outside of Israel with the flour being constantly provided. You see Elijah here. I drew a little picture just to show you kind of where Elijah went. This is not accurate at all, but this has to be pretty close to what he did, because he went across the Jordan, then he went north to that place in, remind me where it was? Lebanon, thank you. And then he went south to Samaria. So he's back in the heart of Israel. He's literally going to the capital. The one place you shouldn't go as a political enemy of the king is the king's house, and that's exactly where Elijah goes. 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Ashereth. That's nearly 1,000 prophets. And Elijah's going to make them all look like fools. That is a lot longer than I remember. We're going to do this in chunks. Can I get someone to read 20 to 29? Thank you.
So Ahab went to all the people of Israel and gathered the prophets together at Mount Carmel. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you go limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." And the people did not answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, "I, even I only, am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on the wood. But put no fire to it. And I will prepare the other bull, and lay it on the wood, and put no fire to it. And you call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God." And all the people answered, "It is well spoken." Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose for yourselves 1 bull and prepare it first, for you are many, and call upon the name of your God, but put no fire to it." And they took the bull that was given them, and they prepared it and called upon the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, "O Baal, answer us." And there was no voice and no one answered, and they limped around the altar that they had made. And at noon Elijah mocked them, saying, "Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is missing, or he is relieving himself, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened." And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out upon them. And as midday passed, they raved on until the time of the offering of oblation, but there was no voice. No one answered, no one paid attention.
A lot of important setup. So we have Elijah saying, hey, there's only me to worship God, showing just how few people are worshiping in the kingdom of Israel, Yahweh. And he points out that there's a huge discrepancy. You have 450 guys. which I have to think that there was that many people because they like to cut themselves as a form of worship. So if you lose one priest of Baal, oh no, there's 449 other guys to continue the worship. Before I go on any farther, let me explain to you Baal. Baal, at this point, was a Canaanite god who had been around for a bit, but now became the main god of Israel. Some important things to note. He's the god of, you guessed it, fertility, because every freaking god was the god of fertility in one form or fashion. What's important, though, as to why all this is happening, is he's seen as the god of the sun. He's seen as the ruler of the pantheon. His name literally means Lord. It was actually a common name to use to describe God up until the split and the God of the kingdom of Israel became Baal himself. So Baal, used as a word for God in place of Yahweh, was then dropped. So then at this point you see most commonly Adonai or Elohim. So he's the sun god, which is why there's this big fire. If he controls the sun, which is a big ball of fire, he should have no problem shooting or calling some fire down onto this bull. And I like that Elijah lets them pick the bull. You know what? We need 2 bulls, but I'm going to let you guys pick first so that they can pick the fattest and the best bull. And Elijah gets the other one, who we can assume is probably a good one too, or they could have had a crappy one and a good one. We don't know, but that part's unimportant. So as these people start cutting themselves, Elijah starts having a gaggle and a half, going, oh, hey, you have no God? Huh, that's weird. Hey, maybe he's thinking, call him out of his deep thoughts. You know what, maybe he's using the restroom. I know it's really hard to hear in the godly second office, but maybe he's there. Or, maybe he's walking. Maybe he just can't hear you because he's not in the place that you thought he was. Maybe if you scream louder, he'll hear you. Or, you know what? Maybe he just took a little power nap. Maybe he was really exhausted that morning. Just call him. Come on. And none of it works. And they try and they go farther, and as was said, no one answered, no one paid attention. My little inner thing that I have when this is happening is I imagine there's a bunch of demons in the invisible realm. And to me, the invisible realm and the visible realm are in the same spot. But if we put on like fancy glasses so we could see into the invisible as well, we'd see a bunch of demons around us if that were here. I'm not saying that's happening here. I'm just saying imagine that. And you have God being this big giant thing where his waist is at the ground level and he's just looking over everyone like, I want you to try something. Do it. Do it. And no one does. That's my little image when I have all this happening. Totally not biblical, but it's what I have. No one answers. No one paid attention. After they picked the best bull, after they set up their altar, now it's Elijah's turn. I have to think that Elijah didn't set up his altar yet, because in good Hebrew storytelling, they would have mentioned all the altars being built at once, which means Elijah's done no preparation, he's done nothing. They've gone to their altar that they've been worshiping at, and Elijah builds his. Can I get someone to read 30 to 35? Thank you.
Then Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. And all the people came near to him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be your name. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 seahs of seed. And he put the wood in order and cut the bowl in pieces, and laid it on the wood. And he said, fill 4 jars with water, pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. And he said, do it a second time. They did it a second time. He said, do it a third time. They did it a third time. Water ran around the altar and filled the trench also with water. At the time of the offering of
Oh, just 35. A seah is 7 quarts, so this is about a 2-gallon thing. And it can hold about 4 gallons of seed, which is a lot. So he asked them to bring 4 jars the first time, And then he asked them to do it again, which brings us to 8. And he asked us to do it again, which brings us to 12. Hey, look, the 12 tribes. Also, you have 3 times, which I have to think was probably for the Trinity. That wasn't a main theme of this, but God being singular from the get-go we know is not the case, because let us build in our image. I just wanted to point those things out because this shows that he didn't just put in a little water. He drenched this thing. This meat is soggy and mushy and blech. So what happens next really shows just how powerful God is. Because you have the sun god who doesn't answer, and then you have the God of our forefathers who we don't worship anymore, because I had to think some of them thought he was lame, or because it was by royal decree. So can I get 36 to 40? Thank you.
And at the time of the offering of the oblation, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And Elijah said to them, Seize the prophets of Baal. Let not one of them escape. And they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slaughtered them there.
Remember how they were limping around because they like to cut themselves? So I have to imagine quite a few of them just did a nice rip of their leg, which means they lose a lot of movement. So chasing down 450 guys who are all limping has to be not that hard. Remember that this is over 500 years since the Exodus. So God's fire hasn't been seen by many people. It could have been shown. It's not written, so we don't know. But most likely, God's fire hadn't been shown to anyone, let alone God appearing as fire. And then with Elijah, you have God sending his fire. And I have to imagine this isn't just a little tiny match. This is a tornado of fire that consumes it all. All the water that was there, gone. All the meat, completely burned. The brook Kishon, I actually did not look up. My first thought was this is by Jerusalem, but that doesn't make a lot of sense for how Elijah does all his profiting, so this probably runs into the Jordan. And there was probably more than one brook named Kishon. There's just a lot of things get repeated and a lot of things get redone. There's like 3 or 4 Bethels, there's like 2 Bethlehems. The names get reused a lot. That's why you have Bethel of Judah or Bethlehem of Judah, that you have to specify it. I mean, it's like if I say we're going to go to Ontario, well, what do you mean, Canada or California? If we're going to Paris, what do you mean, Ohio or France? Names are reused. At this point, we see that the people go, oh, shoot, the God of our fathers actually wasn't some just story. This is actual God. So let's turn to worship him. Unfortunately, that will be short-lived, but it is good to note that the people, as much as they are sheeple, they are able to be turned back to God. Can I get someone to read the end of chapter 18? God sends rain. Thank you, Sass.
And Elijah said to Ahab, Go up, eat, and drink, for there is a sound of the rushing of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and to drink. And Elijah went up to the top of the mountain, Mount of
God stashed him up real quick. Made sure he was protected so that none of the people could eventually kill him. We'll read that Jezebel was infuriated that 450 prophets of Baal were killed because she worships Baal. I love that God gives the command to Ahab, rest for a little bit, eat, now book it. Because those clouds that are black, as we know, carry a lot of rain. And if this is the first rain the ground's experienced in 3.5 years, we're talking proper Arizonan monsoon weather. Your roads flooded, your fields flooded, bottom floor of your house flooded, your roof probably collapsed and also flooded. This is rain, heavy rain, and good rain. This rain's going to soak so far into the ground that those crops are going to be fed. I don't know where Jezreel is, but I have to assume he probably had yet another kingly house there. Considering he's king, he probably had many houses. Hit me.
This passage at the very end where it says the hand of the Lord is on Elijah, and he gathered up his garment and ran before Ahab. This has always really intrigued me because can you imagine this guy holding his cloak and the hand of God is on him? So we're talking superhuman stamina, strength, speed. Can you imagine this guy sprinting past Ahab and his carts? That's how I picture it.
Yeah. I see it as he's just doing proper high knees the whole way.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Doing flips, huh?
He's Spider-Manning from each rooftop.
It's like a $6 million man.
Yeah, there's so many things that could mean. The hand of God was on Elijah. Could have given him super strength. Could have made he was protected. It could be either one. It's probably both. Gave him everything he needed, considering he was just fed by crows and ravens and the same flour and oil for 3.5 years. I'm pretty sure that God has his hand on Elijah really, really well. But it is fascinating to note that Elijah went up and down the mountain 7 times. He probably wasn't, but I love to think that he just went into the fetal position 7 times. He probably did. He probably went on his hands and knees, and his face was so far down to the ground that saying it was on his knees was much more clean than saying his nose was in the earth. We have that in other parts, but that's better to say when you're prone. That's not better to say when you're on your knees on the ground. So there's a bunch of things. He could have been standing, and he was leaned so far over, his head was in his knees. If that's the case, I give props to his flexibility. I'm jealous. But he does that 7 times, and then this black cloud comes, and then he books it. We don't know where, but he leaves. And he leaves quick. Because I have to assume that Jezreel from this Mount Carmel was not that far. So he left super fast. Our next part is going to be Ahab comes to Jezebel, and Jezebel is angry. It's going to be chapter 19, verses 1 through 8. Can I get a volunteer?
Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. And Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid, and he arose, and he ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked the Lord he might die, saying, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." And he lay down and slept under the broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came to him a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." And he rose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the Mount of God.
Again, this is not biblical at all. But this is what I'm picturing. Elijah's in a pub cheering with everyone. Then a dude who looks very official walks in and says, Elijah, you're dead. Nice knowing y'all. Bye. And does it in the Looney Tunes. There's a cloud of him and he's out the door already. And then I love this next part. It sounds like he just needs a nap and some food because he's throwing a 3-year-old tantrum. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Why are you mean? So then God gives him a Snickers, gives him some milk, has him take a little nap, and then he's fine. The part that I like that is, I think it's right here. If I don't remember, God answers his things by giving him the bread, giving him some water, and then giving him friends. Because we've seen before that Elijah definitely feels lonely. Because he goes, I am the only one who worships God in front of you all. And then we see him here again because Jezebel had killed all but 100 prophets thanks to Obadiah. There has to not be a lot of proper religious figures in this place. And Elijah's feeling that loneliness. He probably lost a lot of friends. So he's out there alone and goes, God, why are you doing this? And God goes, okay, eat your Snickers, drink your milk, have your nap, and I'll give you some friends as well. So he feeds him, he feeds him, he waters him, he gives him sunlight, and then like a good cactus, lets him go off on his way. We'll see that this isn't the end of God taking care of Elijah in this one specific part, because we see that Elijah is going to meet some other people, and then he's going to get Elisha. Can I get someone to read? No, I'm going to read this part because I have fun. This is going to be, where am I? That's the big question. No, that's the big question. Where am I? Starting at verse 9. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. This isn't meaning that I've been envious. This means that I've been filled with righteousness about God, how no one is worshiping you. For the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with a sword. And I, even I only, am left. And they seek my life to take it away. Again, Elijah is feeling lonely. He feels like no one else is there. Because probably all the people he knew, all the communication chains he had, are literally dead. And God said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountain and broke in pieces the rock before the Lord. This had to be a mighty strong wind, something to make even the Santa Ana winds jealous. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. We all know what earthquakes are like. This was literally a ground-splitting earthquake, but God was not in that earthquake. And after the earthquake was a fire, which shows you how strong this is, because at this point, there's no gas mains or gas lines for them to be ruptured and sparks to happen. This is going straight through the earth till you see magma popping up. But God wasn't in the fire. After the fire was the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there was a voice to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he said, I have been jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with a sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek to take my life away. They can't say yes, and that really infuriates me. There is no word for yes in Hebrew, so the only way he says yes is by repeating phrases. Sorry, that's a nitpick I have. And the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu, son of Nimshi, you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel, I'm not going to pronounce that, you shall anoint to be prophet in your place. And the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death, and the one who escapes the sword of Jehu shall Elijah put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all on their knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Basically, everyone who has not worshipped Baal at all, they will be left, and they will stay. Jehu, that you read here, will eventually be one of the kings of the south. And I find it interesting that God makes a king of Syria, really just showing that God has sovereignty over everything, not just Israel, and at this point, just the tribe of Judah. God is God over everything. And if the story of Elijah doesn't show you that, then I don't know how much more clear I can make it. You have Elijah going to literal non-Israelite places and God caring for him there, and then showing in the place of a pagan realm that God is still there. I had mentioned it, there's a strong wind that breaks the mountain. There's a mighty earthquake that breaks the land. There's literal fire. And that itty-bitty whisper, that's what God's in. Because I think that shows the power that God has, but it also shows the gentleness he has. Because we've seen all before this the power that God has, but we haven't been shown the rod and the staff of the shepherd that is used to comfort. We've seen that he uses the slingshot to shoot away the wolves or the club to bash away them, but we haven't seen that hook that'll pull up a sheep that's fallen off a cliff. And you can't read the rest of Elijah without these two chapters, 18 and 19. I think they're the most important part of Elijah's whole story because they just show everything that God will do and the care that God has for everything in it. The last part we have is the call of Elisha. And there's a lot of fun social things that I will have to talk about to make a lot of things explained. Can I get someone to read 19 to the end? Chapter 19, verse 19 to the end. Thank you.
So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him, and he was with the 12. Elisha passed by him and cast his cloak upon him, and he left the oxen and ran after Elijah, and said, "Let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back again for what I have done to you." And he returned from following him, and took the yoke of oxen and sacrificed them, and boiled the flesh and gave the ears of the oxen and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and went after Elijah and assisted him.
It wasn't a drive-by just chucking a cloak onto someone. This was, okay, it's hard to explain because it's adoption, but it's not adoption in the way that we think it. But it's more than apprenticeship. This is Elijah and Elisha being of one family, but it's like being the brotherhood in a profession, where they are going to be closer than close, but they're not blood. Does that make sense? Because if not, I'm going to use a lot more metaphors, and it's going to get a lot murkier, but that's the best I can do right now. He's with 12 oxen. Oxen aren't cheap, and there's 12. And he slaughters them all, which shows that these 12 oxen are so unimportant to that family, they can kill them all and still continue to working their fields. Elisha is wealthy, which also shows just how far he is going to go from this life of comfort to serve God. And it's interesting that he immediately knows to follow Elijah. This isn't something of, oh, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. He immediately books it, showing that his dedication is right there. Killing them, I don't know why they boil it. I'm going to say that right now. I don't know why they boil it. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm sure there was some reason. Maybe they like the taste of boiled meat. I don't know. But they boil it. And they have a big farewell feast to Elisha because this is him going away for forever. If he's going to come back, it's not going to be coming back for family and friends. It's going to be coming back because God said, you guys have done wrong. You need to fix it. We see that Elisha will eventually do double the feats that Elijah does. Elijah has 7 miracles, feats that he does, but Elisha, we will see, will do 14. So this is, I would love to say this is the start of Israel turning back to God, but as we know, especially from all the gospel readings we've had, that's not the case. It stops being the case before we even got to this part, and it will continue not being that case for the rest of this. But it's not for lack of trying. Also, fun thing, Elijah has a friend. Yay! He's not alone, finally. Hebrews is a mighty thing, and I think Elijah would have had a lot less problems if he turned to prayer, but the fact that he remained loyal to God even through it all, instead of saying, God, how you have abandoned me, it's, God, I'm the only one here worshiping with you. Could you give me someone else? It shows that God listens to the prayers and even answers all the problems that he did have, that Elisha didn't even bring to God, that we have written. I don't know Elijah's prayer life. He's been dead for over 3,000 years. But he is faithful through it all. And that is a great way to show that even in the worst of places where there are no other Christians with you, you have Elijah, you have Job, you have John the Baptist, you have Jesus, all these great people showing that you can still follow God even in the face of all the bad stuff. When there is problems, when there is pain, God is still there with you. Even if you feel alone, he will answer your prayers. With that, I like to do prayer requests at the end, as I keep mentioning. Are there any specific prayer requests that you guys have? I'm going to slowly walk around the room to make sure that I don't see any. Right there.
Healing for those who are sick. My parents are sick right now.
Okay. Healing for the sick. Anyone else?
Making sure that none of my chemistry class die of back pain.
Make sure we don't fail. Anyone else? Okay.
A friend of ours, her daughter's gonna have, well, supposed to gonna have the baby today, and I hope that everything will go well today.
I realize now I'm going to forget, so I'm going to write this all down. Can you remind me what your prayer was again? I forgot, Sassy.
Oh, a friend of ours, her daughter's gonna have a baby, and I hope that everything will go well.
All right. Any other prayer requests? Okay. Then let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you that we have been able to study your word, and we pray to remain as faithful as Elijah was throughout all the problems. We specifically lift up these prayers that we don't fail chemistry due to back problems, for healing for parents and their respiratory illness, healing for mothers, and for the safe delivery of a baby. All these prayers we lift up to you, and we list silently on our hearts other prayers that we have. All these prayers we lift up to you, God. We thank you that you answer our prayers in ways that are honoring of you and remind us that you are in charge. We pray that you remind us, not through the earthquakes or the fires or the tearing winds, but the soft whisper, that you are with us. We ask this on your name. Amen. Next week, I will try to finish the story of Elijah. At a minimum, read the next 3 chapters.